Okay, welcome back to the Author Speaker Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Siebold, and I have a very special guest on the show, my wife, Dawn Andrews Siebold. Dawn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
I had to gather her up from the other side of the mansion here to be on the show. But today we're going to talk about keynote speaking versus training. And I know you run our coaching program for the graduates of the Bill Grove Speech Workshop that join your video coaching program,
Right.
your 12-month video coaching, which you've done for, 20 years, 20 plus years, I guess. What would you say is the primary difference between keynote speaking and training?
Well, I think first you have to define what keynote speaking is, because I think everyone that goes to speak thinks they're keynote speakers. And I think that the definition really is probably first what we should discuss. So in the keynote, it's the short speech. It's anything typically less than about an hour, and it's rooted in entertainment versus the teaching or the trainings or presentation skills, which are rooted in content.
Yeah, and the keynote, I mean, to be really specific, keynote speaking really is a keynote speech is the keynote speech of a convention or a meeting.
Right.
Right. So it's just been thrown around so loosely that everybody calls everything keynote, like to your point. So entertainment is really the difference, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, but I think it's really important for your audience to know that, when businesses hire speakers to come in and they ask for keynote speaking, they need to know the difference between a presentation and a keynote. Because a lot of speakers, I think that one of the biggest mistake beginning speakers make is that they call themselves keynote speakers, and when they go to try to get hired by a speakers bureau or a company and they deliver mostly content and they don't get hired, and they're really great speakers, but they just don't know the difference in the delivery.
And they're trainers mostly.
And they're mostly trainers.
They're delivering a lot of content and that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah,
But I think because the word keynote has just been misused in this industry from probably the very beginning until training really took over in the 1960s, everyone thinks they're keynote speakers, and I think you have to really make sure that you understand the definition when you're trying to market yourself. If you're either marketing yourself as a keynoter, who certainly could also do trainings, presentations, and workshops, or marketing yourself as a presenter.
What do you think the number one mistake is? And you've run the Bill Grove Speech Workshop now with me, and we did it with Bill Grove, of course, back in the day before when Bill was alive. We've run it since what? We've been involved in it since 1997, I guess.
Right.
So what's the number one mistake you've seen since 1997? All these workshops we've done all over the world, with Bill, without Bill, together. The number one mistake that speakers make when they come in the speech workshop and they think it's one thing, and what's the biggest mistake they make, in your opinion?
I think there's two big mistakes I've seen over the last 20 some odd years. The first mistake is they think we're teachers. They think if you go and speak, you're a teacher. And I think it's just because we have such a high need to get our message across, and we have, we've gained some knowledge in a certain subject matter, and we feel like everyone wants to know that knowledge. And, back in the day, content was king. And that's been many, many years ago. Content's no longer king. And so I think the first thing that they have to remember is that a lot of people, our biggest competition in the speaking business is Google. It's not other speakers. Content, you can, Google it and get it for free.
On your phone.
So on your phone.
Sitting on the bus.
Right.
Whatever. Yeah.
So I think the first mistake is everyone thinks we're teachers as the keynoters. And then the second mistake I see quite often is we'll get people coming to the speech workshop, and because they're not afraid to speak, so they get up in church, or they're a Toastmaster, or they speak in their community, and because they're not afraid to speak, they feel like they're good enough to be paid. And there's a big difference being not afraid to speak and enjoying it even than a professional paid speaker. It's like one's in high school and one's playing high school football and the other's in the NFL. There's a big difference. Just because you're not afraid to speak doesn't mean you're worth being paid.
Well, why, so many people come to the workshop, as you know, Dawn, and they say, well, it's all about my content. I've got these things I want to share. Why is content not king?
Because I can get it for free. Again, back in the day, I think, what I feel people, most of the time when you're speaking to a professional speaker and you find out what their topic is, right? You go, okay, well, your topic is mental toughness. And for the most part, not all the time, but for the most part, the speakers who have a topic that is strong as mental toughness or presentation skills or time management usually means that person lacked that skill years ago, started studying it, overcame the skill, became an expert in the skill, and now they want to turn around and teach that skill because they overcame it.
Right.
So I always remember sitting in the green room with you, behind the scenes at an event, and if someone said, I speak on time management, my first thought is, oh, you were always late. right?
Yeah.
I mean, because usually they become an
Exactly.
expert and then they try to teach on it. So, but it is, with as much content as you have out there, over 20 years, almost 30 years in mental toughness, you can Google Steve Siebold and get more content than you could ever speak on in a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so again, back in the day before the internet, you had some concepts that people had never heard before, then they had to hire you to come in and speak. Nowadays, there's so much chatter, there's so much content. Companies just simply don't need to pay the fees they pay a keynote speaker to have content.
Well, that's one of the great secrets of the speaking business is what you just said. For one, the content is really dead because the internet changed all that. It was in books. It was easy. It wasn't so easy to access.
Right.
It's so easy now. But one of the key things, and something that we personally made a fortune on, was getting proprietary content from companies, getting inside information on companies, and then speaking them when you give a speech or a training. You reveal that proprietary information that you got from their company. Mm-hmm. And there's lots of ways we do that, but that's another show completely. That's a whole another training session,
right?
In itself. But outside of that, because they can't Google that,
right?
But they can Google everything else. So we end up being entertainers, delivering something in a way to get their attention. And but if it's just pure content, you're not worth much as a speaker, right?
No, I mean you're not worth hardly anything at all these days. And I think another thing your audience may consider is the content is one set skill you have to have. You have to have content. I mean, it's a weird business. We're not saying teach a whole bunch, but you got to have something, right? You can't just get up there and just entertain.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that's super key that a lot of people don't think about when they go into the speaking industry is that, so say you have content, say you have mental toughness like Steve does, and you want to talk on mental toughness. It's not the topic companies pay for. Because again, I can get the topic for free.
Yeah.
It's your point of view of topic that they pay for. So if I want Steve to come in and speak to a company on mental toughness, I can get anybody to speak on mental toughness if it's just about content. But if I want Steve's point of view of mental toughness, and I agree with your point of view, then I've got to pay, and I've got to pay a lot for that. So
Right.
It's really the point of view of your topic that companies pay for, not the topic.
Right. And my point, just to give you an example, my point of view was always, like we talked about it on an earlier episode, was, was basically living in objective reality, getting your sales team in objective reality about how good they are.
Right.
And I talk about this in my mental toughness podcast all the time. In reality, critical thinking versus magical thinking or delusional thinking, which is most teams have a lot of delusional thinking. Even sports teams have, professional sports teams have delusional thinking where they think they're far better than they are and the stats don't back it up. So we come in there and we just jolt them into reality. Now, they're not really crazy about it. I don't get a lot of standing ovations, but we've done turnarounds, hundreds of millions of dollars in turnarounds, of course, over the years because of this particular one philosophy that wakes people up when they're open to receiving it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's another key point when people are writing books and you're writing a book on mental toughness or you're writing a book on time management and you don't put your point of view in the book. It's a mistake because again, one of the easiest ways I sell Steve in the Speakers Bureau is I send a copy of the book to a client and I say, read Steve's book. If you like Steve's philosophy, his point of view, in other words, then you'll love Steve on stage. If it's not a good fit for your company, and we've had companies that your strong point of view was not a good fit, then I'll recommend another speaker. But anytime you get a chance to give your point of view so that you're showing social media, any articles you write, any podcasts, any blogs it's your point of view that'll make the difference than hiring you or someone else, and it'll also increase your pay.
Good point. I remember working that Tupperware convention. You weren't with me on that one in Fort Lauderdale. Tupperware.
I should have never booked that.
The average age was deceased.
I should have never booked that.
It was old, man.
I should have never booked that.
I terrified them, and I said, "Are you sure they're all ladies, older ladies, like in their 60s, 70s, 80s?" And then literally, and they were the nicest ladies. They like they knitted the sweaters they had on, and I'm in their hammered, and I told the guy, and he goes, "No, they need objective reality." I'm like, "Are you sure? I don't want to beat up on these older ladies." And I scared them. It scared, and I just felt terrible. And the guy said, "That's exactly what they needed." He was trying to turn around the Tupperware business.
But that gives you a great point to research your audience before you accept the speech.
Wrong.
We should have never accepted that.
Yeah, so. No question. Well, that's basically
Well, I was just gonna say, but that shows hope for everyone that's out there that thinks that Steve's the guru on mental toughness, which you probably are the number one speaker on it right now, and Brian Tracy's the number one on content. Everyone thinks, well, someone already has has that topic, there's room for everyone out there because it's not based on topic, it's based on your specific point of view. So we could have hundreds of speakers speaking on the same topic when you're working with a speakers bureau, because I'm going to be looking for that specific speaker with the point of view that is congruent with the company philosophy.
Good point. Dawn, we appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you.
Back to your old job. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.
Thank you.